I'm Scott with Shoms Photography, and today I'm going to talk about shooting in full sun. I've watched a lot of videos on YouTube, and every time I go on there, I'm very disappointed because all the videos that are on there, shooting in harsh sun, shooting in full sun, shooting in the sun, all the videos and all these professionals are shooting their subjects in the shade. I go on there, I'm thinking, oh, I'm going to see some new technique about shooting in full sun. And then all of a sudden, they put their subject in the shade, and the background is fully in full sun, but the subject's in shade. I'm not understanding what the purpose of that is when they say that they're shooting in shade and not in full sun or harsh sun. I watched a video the other day. It was a pro photo guy using pro photo gear, and he said he didn't have enough power to shoot in full sun. And I'm just looking at his gear, and I'm trying to figure out, how is that possible? If I can shoot in full sun, everyone should be able to shoot in full sun. Now, there's two different types of shooting in full sun. One, soft light. Second, hard light. The most realistic is hard light, because when you walk down the street and you're looking at a subject or a person walking down the street, they're lit in hard light. Artificial light is the soft light. Doesn't make a difference which way you want to pick, soft light or hard light, it all can be done in full sun. So pick the one that you like the best. I like to mimic realism, which is hard light, since that's the way the actual eye sees it. All right, let's go over my camera gear, and then I'll start explaining the difference between shooting in high-speed sync and not shooting in high-speed sync. So, I want that shallow depth of field. I'm using a 70-200 at 2.8. To get that 2.8, I am using an ND16 filter. Yes, some people will turn around and say, well, the ND filter causes soft focus and stuff like that. I never had a problem. My images are always tack sharp using an ND filter. Again, I'm using a prime ND filter. I'm not using a variable ND filter. Variable ND filters causes color cast and vignetting, where a prime ND filter doesn't give you that. All right, so there's the lens. My camera, this is my outdoor location shooting case right here. So when I pull this camera out, I already know what the settings are. It's ISO 100, shutter speed of 160, and again, the aperture is 2.8. So, do I need a light meter? Well, sometimes you might want to have a light meter, sometimes you don't need to have a light meter. All I do is I move the subject 2 steps backwards or 2 steps forwards, and then that's good enough for me. I don't even have to change the power on my strobe. I use a color checker. The color checker is not just for checking the colors, it also checks my exposure. So if the model is holding this, and let's just open it up, and they're holding this thing right here, and this white over here is blinking in the camera, you're overexposed. All you have to do is tell them to step back until that stops blinking, or step forward if that's too dark. All right, that's how simple that is. My custom white balance is always set to 49K. That's what I set my custom white balance to. I don't need to set the white balance in here. I just set it to 49K. I use multiple triggers, so depending on if I'm going to use the X Pro, the 32, even the TX 24 gigahertz. Sometimes I like using this because this is just basic and simple. Again, I'm usually only firing one light. So if I'm using the 600, and again, this is my outdoor location strobe setup here in this case. And let's just see what the power is, because I never change it. This power stays the same constantly. It never changes because, again, If it's not bright enough, I have the model step forward. If it's too bright, I have the model step backwards. That's how simple and easy it is. On this power setting is 1/4 plus a 1/7. That's it. It's just right under half power. That's what that's set up as. So I don't use a lot of power to shoot in full sun. I can use a Colt 45, and that is the power setting I need at right around 9 to 10 feet. If I'm using a softer modifier, then they have to come in to right around 6 to 8 feet, and I'll get the soft light with that modifier, or with the softer modifier. So if I was using this soft box, I would at 1/4 power plus 7, they would need to be in at about 6 to 7 feet, somewhere in there. Now that's only using one diffuser. With the bare bulb system, the light goes out the sides, it don't go out the front, so therefore I don't have to worry about as much of a hot spot, so I don't need the inner diffuser. And a lot of times I will just use the dim sung dish with the cheetah stand gear, because that doesn't affect any output at all. And then I can always put the outer diffuser on or leave it off. All right, so if I was going to use the 360, so here's the 360. Now the power setting on this, I do adjust. And same way with the 200 or the V860 speed light. I will adjust the powers on those depending on how much power I need. But the 600, I leave it at 1/4 plus 7. That's all I need. So if I'm using the 360, I'm going to have to be about half plus 7. Just because a difference in power. If I'm going to be using the 200, I'm going to be just shy of full power. And if I'm going to use a V860, I'm going to be using full power completely. When you're shooting with a speed light, so let me grab it out of here. If you're shooting horizontal, if you're only shooting 3/4, then you can get by shooting with a flash like this. But if you want to shoot full body, you need the flash in orientation like this. Because this way, the light is lighting the full body, and you're not wasting all the light going off this direction. Now, I'm going to be posting some images in with this video and some video. Shooting with this in full sun, shooting with the 200 in full sun, the 360 in full sun, and the 600 in full sun. Now, I do not use high-speed sync. The reason why I don't shoot high-speed sync is because I'm using an ND filter. The ND filter keeps me in the low f-stops where I want to be in the first place. And when you're shooting with high-speed sync, these are pulsating. All these strobes are pulsating to keep up with the shutter speed. So what happens is you're using a lot more power. So at high-speed sync, with this, it's going to be running pretty much full power. That's a lot of battery drain, and plus it's a lot of strain onto the strobe, especially if you're shooting every 3 seconds. Where with shooting with the ND filter and shooting with just at 1/4 power plus 7, I can shoot all day long and not have to worry about this strobe overheating compared to if I was shooting with high-speed sync. Now, again, you can shoot high-speed sync or you can shoot ND filter, whichever way you want. But for me shooting in full sun, I just shoot with the ND filter because I know I get more power out of my strobe. And if I need that extra power from 1/4 to 7, I can go half power, I can go full power. And again, still light my subject. Where high-speed sync, you're maxing out pretty much all your power on that one shot, where I don't have to worry about that. And plus it has faster recycling times due to the fact that it's not having to cover up for the pulsating flash. So all these strobes, I can shoot in full sun. And I mean no shade. Well, I should say with the V860, I will use a para 7 as a gobo in between the light and my subject. And that will be what I use on this, on the V860. That's a speed light. Again, that's not a lot of power. That's only like 75 watts seconds power there. And you need all of it to light in full sun. Where this one, I don't need a scrim or a gobo. The 200, I don't need a scrim and a gobo. And the 600, definitely I don't need a scrim and a gobo. The only time I need a scrim and a gobo is with the V860. Now there's two different ways to shoot in full sun. You can shoot backlit or you can shoot the subject into the sun. I don't like shooting the subject into the sun because they're going to start squinting. But if you're using a large enough modifier, then you can actually put them into the shade using that modifier. Not using a tree, not using some kind of building to put them in shade and say you're shooting in full sun. With this size modifier, I'm using this to block the sun if I'm shooting in the direction, or the model's facing the direction of the sun. I can use a large modifier like this. I can use a para, I can use a large octa, but something to block that sun. But I'm not using a building, I'm not using trees, I'm not using anything else because, again, I'm shooting in full sun. I'm using this as a gobo in between the sun and the subject. If the reason why you want to shoot with a large reflector or modifier or something in front of your subject when they're facing the sun is so they're not squinting. So what determines where I want to shoot is what's behind the subject. So sometimes I will have to shoot in full sun and the model facing the sun just because the background behind the model is more attractive than if I face the other direction. So therefore I will use a larger modifier to counteract that situation. The only time I shoot high speed sync is when I am shooting sunset or sunrise. The reason why is it's hard to focus with an ND filter on the lens. That's the time I'm going to use, if I have to, high speed sync. But that is the only time I shoot without the ND filter and possibly shooting high speed sync is during sunset and sunrise. But during the day, all I shoot is with an ND filter and the strobes in manual power. I like being able to control everything and know how much power consumption I'm doing or using and how to control it all and not let some computer in a machine tell me how I want that light to look. Now I'm going to come back and we're going to show some videos and some photos and everything shooting with all of these different lights and showing that yes, shooting in full sun can be done with low powered strobes. You don't need 1200 watt strobes. You don't need 2400 watt power strobes. This all can be done with from a speed light all the way up to a 600. So stay tuned and I'll be right back.